Welcome to the Bayou City Soccer Podcast. Whether inside or outside the loop, we are talking everything soccer in Houston. Y'all ready? Let's get it.
Welcome to a special episode of the Bayou City Soccer Podcast, Orange Talk. We are pleased to be joined by MLS Season Pass Apple TV broadcaster Keith Costigan. Keith, how's it going?
It's good. I'm excited to get into your city this weekend. I have a couple of my very favorite restaurants are in your city, so I'm excited for that. And then I'm excited for what I think should be a really good game as well.
We have a lot of good food here. Yeah. It's one thing that I think everyone looks forward to about Houston is, especially visiting, get to get those good restaurants. Yeah. So we're a couple weeks into the MLS season so far. We got to see Inter Miami here in Houston early this year. Is this Inter Miami's supporter shield again this season?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm comfortable saying that right now because durability for Messi, Suarez, like those kind of players, we have to see because they're a little bit older. But I do think they've built around those players really well. Like even when Messi's kind of been on the bench, you're like, oh man, they brought in really like Segovia, Allende, like, oh man, this is a squad capable of challenging on all fronts. But I look at Columbus, have had a good start, and they're probably going to make a signing in the summer to replace Cucho. I think LAFC will get it right. We just seen LAFC beat Inter Miami in cup play, and they've had to play a lot of games. I know they've lost 3 games as well, but still too early for me to kind of crown them. I don't like doing that, but if you're twisting my arm and says you got to put money on somebody, with what we've seen so far, you'd have to put out Messi in Miami.
Yeah, I think one of the other big news things going around MLS now is talk about this move to the European calendar, right? Trying to match up with how Europe does it, their transfer windows and things like that. What are your thoughts on that and MLS possibly moving there?
In terms of the playing, look, I'll be at the games always. Like I want to be there. I'm a fan of it. So whenever the games are played, I'm going to be watching. I don't know how you do that. Like where's that gap in between if you're going to change it and shift the whole calendar? I do think it would be easier, but then again, I also think about, hey, Keith, go to New England. We have a game in mid-December for you, and I'm like, uh-oh, that's going to be cold, But it works in other sports in America, so why not? If I was to give my 2 cents, I would say it works well the way it is. I think going through the summer is really good. I think we have some great moments. I think the July 4th games, those kind of things. So I wouldn't rush to make that change. I think what we do have to do is work around World Cups, work around those kind of tournaments, Gold Cups, and have better breaks so, clubs aren't losing all of the players because we're seeing more and more MLS players involved in these competitions. So I do want to see that, but I wouldn't be in a rush to change the calendar. Because I do think it works quite well for Major League Soccer.
Looking at this game at Shell Energy Stadium this weekend, LAFC coming to town. Seems like the Dynamo have seen a lot of them the last couple of years. They're met in the playoffs a couple of times, but a little bit different of LAFC team. We saw them beat Miami, like you mentioned this week. One thing I think a big question around LAFC is what's going on with Olivier Giroud?
I hope you're not asking me for an answer there because I don't know. By the way, you guys always seem to get LAFC in the weirdest possible moment. I was looking back at the games, and 2 years ago, it was like CONCACAF final, and you guys hammered them in one of those games.
4-0, yeah.
Yeah, last year, similar, we had a hurricane. You remember that? Like the game was literally about to start.
People were at the stadium, yeah.
I was in the stadium. I luckily got out that night and beat it, but JP Navarro, one of our Spanish commentators, didn't. So he was stuck there till Wednesday. So that was kind of like, there's always like a bizarre story around those games. So I think that's always interesting. This weekend, I do think it's a very different LAFC. I don't think Denny Bouanga's playing as well. I think there's questions over Giroud, of course. I don't know. Like you have the Inter Miami game and Giroud's on the bench. I think we're more likely to see him start this weekend, but that means the bad news for you guys, it's Giroud with a point to prove, right? Like he wants to score. He wants to be involved in those Inter Miami games. So I don't know. I've seen games where they haven't got crosses into him. I've seen games where they have got crosses in and he's been a step off. I still think it's a work in progress. So far, you have to say, Giroud hasn't delivered. The beauty of LAFC, maybe over other teams, including a Houston, is when one big player doesn't show up, they tend to have others that will, and the squad is kind of testament to that.
Yeah, and this LAFC team, probably a little bit of chip on their shoulder after their crosstown rivals just lifted MLS Cup last year. I imagine they definitely want to come back this year and prove that they're the top team, right?
Yeah. Look, anytime you have to watch a close neighbor lift a trophy, it can help. You have a former LAFC front office guy leading that charge in terms of overseeing the squad. I get the feeling that LAFC felt they would have taken care of Galaxy in the playoffs, but they fell to Seattle, obviously, and didn't get that opportunity. There's definitely a point to prove. LAFC were not built to compete. They were built to win. And they won't accept anything less. I do think their priority so far has been CONCACAF Champions Cup because they play it every Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday. They've taken care of Columbus. Really, really big match up there, and they got past them. Speaking to people around LAFC, though, they're saying, look, we still want to win our games in MLS because you have to get a rhythm. But I would say if you're going to play LAFC at any time, play them in between two games against Inter Miami. That gives you your best opportunity of getting success.
We're looking at this Dynamo team this year. They've yet to win. The big moves this offseason, Hector Herrera and Coco Carrasquilla leaving. I think everyone kind of thought, what do they do there? But those two guys, obviously very big holes to fill, right, for this Dynamo team.
Yeah, I think, and you add in Mikhail as well. You take out the spine of a team. By the way, I think over the last few years, Ben Olsen has done an incredible job in terms of making Houston relevant again, lifting a trophy, becoming a playoff team. So when you go through a moment like this, I think he deserves the support of everybody to get his players in. We've seen Linger being announced coming in as a new attacking midfielder, Pablo Ortiz coming in as a new defender. It's not what you want to hear, but it becomes a bit of a transition moment because you're replacing real quality. And in terms of that midfield area, you're replacing real quality and Carrasquilla and Herrera and real experience with Jack McGlynn, who's talented, but he's never led a team. He's never been the focal point. So that's going to take time. I think McGlynn is supremely talented, but there was always going to be that moment where you're like, okay, it's different. He's not the same makeup as a Herrera. He's not the same makeup as a Carrasquilla. So I think that midfield area is still a work in progress. But again, I go back to Ben. I think the work he's done over the last couple of years, he's earned the right to be given time right now to get his players in again and make Houston a threat again. I think until those players come in, we're going to see these growing pains continue.
Yeah, a lot of growing pains defensively. Offensively, too, they've struggled, not scoring as much. Ezequiel Ponce, their big record signing DP. We saw him come in last year, get some goals. This year, he's kind of slow to find his form. Do you think Ponce has enough with around him as well as can he be that, leading number 9 for a big time MLS team?
I think he can. I've seen enough to say this guy can score goals at a really good level in this league. I feel like Houston is always that team where you like, we have a great midfield. Now all we need is a good striker. And then you get the good striker and you're like, well, we just lost our midfield. So wait till we get you're always like playing catch up on that one area of the field. I think until Linger gets in and you see an attacking midfielder behind him, maybe, Aliyu or whoever might be returning to form and other wide players giving you better options. I think until you see all of those things happening, you can't really judge Ponce on the current form because the service simply hasn't been there. So I think you look at forwards and you go, wow, they're missing a lot of chances. Is he prolific enough? I think he will be prolific enough. But again, I think you have to build around them for that to happen. And right now, Houston aren't creating chances. I think it was like one shot on goal against Portland last week, and that's simply not going to get it done.
Yeah, especially in this league. One other big question for the Dynamo goalkeeper. They lost Andrew Tarbell for the year. Jimmy Marr, who's been around, is now out, and it's rookie Blake Gillingham in goal. Is a goalkeeper like that, having a rookie, a guy that's really never played before, how big a difference is that for a team that has playoff aspirations like this Dynamo team really do?
It's huge. I'd be very surprised if Houston don't look to make a move and bring in more experience there. That's not a knock on Gillingham. Thought he made a couple of big saves last week. And I think we all love the romantic side of a young player coming in and playing well and winning a spot. And you talk about, wow, like opportunity presents itself, and he grabbed it with both hands. But I think either way, you have to add a little bit more experience and quality in that position. Because as you mentioned, if you want to become a playoff team, you need someone there to either back it up or take over the mantle and, guide Gillingham through this moment. So again, I go to that midfield. You lose Mikael, and I mentioned the spine. You don't have a ready-made goalkeeper right now with the experience at this level. So you look right down the middle of that team behind Ponce, and you can kind of understand why he's not getting goals. But yeah, I would imagine Houston are going to make a move in terms of that goalkeeper position. And I would imagine that's going to happen sooner rather than later as well.
We talked a lot about Linger and Ortiz coming in. The Dynamo, it's still very early in a very long MLS season. Do you feel like they still have A, the time, and B, the talent coming in that can kind of turn the ship around with Olsen?
Yeah, I definitely think, looking at the group, I think you have enough players in there to get yourself back in the mix. The only issue I always say when you're playing catch up is you need things to go perfectly, right? Like if you're playing catch up and the new signings come in, and then you're like, oh, it's going to take a few games to get them get used to everything. Okay, they're going to miss a few for injury. All of a sudden now you're like, what was once a 4-point gap becomes an 8-point gap, and other teams are making moves too. So I think it's very, very difficult to dig yourself a hole deeper than the rim right now and still get in the mix. I still think we're not at that point yet. It's still very early. It's 6 games in. But I think if you're looking at 9 or 10 games in and you haven't added 2 wins, a draw, and moved yourself in position to help, get closer to those teams above you, then I think the alarm bells start to ring in terms of, this team making the playoffs this year. Because it's a really competitive West. You look at Seattle right now, they haven't kicked off well. Portland look a better team. They were right on the edge last year. Vancouver right at the top. Austin didn't make it last year, but now they're right number 1 and 2. So it's an unforgiving league in that sense if you do have a bad start. But I do think there's still time, and you do need those new players to come in and kind of hit the ground running.
He is MLS Season Pass commentator Keith Costigan. Keith, we look forward to seeing you in Houston this weekend. Safe travels, and we'll talk to you again really soon.
Thank you. I'm hoping for no hurricane this year. I was there twice for the same game last year. So no hurricane, and I'm excited to see you guys too.
Yeah, it might rain on Saturday, but at least no hurricane.
I can take the rain.
Thanks, Keith. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.